Newsmax TV's coverage of America Votes 2016. The Indiana primary continues. I'm J.D. Hayworth, now 8 p.m. in the East, and the Hoosier State has seen the polls closed. Most of the state, 80 counties, for almost 2 hours. The 12 counties in the northwestern corner of the state closed their polls 1 hour ago, and almost upon the closure of the polls, various news organizations projected that Donald Trump was the winner of the Republican primary in Indiana. As soon as that happened, our good friend Michael Reagan, who will join us later in this program, offered this via Twitter. Michael Reagan at Reagan World: the Republican Party is no longer the party of Reagan. It is now the party of Trump. Good luck. We'll talk to Michael about what he means by that, and does it mean Michael Reagan, or, of course, his dad, the 40th president of the United States, Ronald Reagan. Indiana has voted, but now it's time for your voice to be heard. We will be taking your calls for the next hour at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. Here at Newsmax TV, we're listening to you, not here to tell you what you think. We want you to call in and share your views, because we truly are America's forum. Now, with his take on the Indiana results, we're pleased to be joined via Skype from Connecticut by presidential strategist and Newsmax TV political analyst Dick Morris. Dick, you heard me mention the tweet from Michael Reagan tonight. Can the Republican Party rightly be called the party of Donald Trump?
Well, I don't know. That's a bit of a reach. I think Donald Trump will be the nominee. I think that this wraps it up for him. I don't think Cruz will withdraw. I don't think he should. But I think Trump is going to go on and win this on the first ballot. But, you know, JD, I've had a kind of change in my thinking over the last couple of weeks about Donald Trump. I've thought a lot about him. And I've come to the conclusion that the metaphor for Donald Trump is not Ronald Reagan. I agree with Michael on that. It's Dwight Eisenhower.
Well, Donald Trump as Dwight Eisenhower? Tell me more about that, Dick.
In 1952, the Republican conservatives were salivating, were frustrated and salivating at the thought of electing a true conservative president after 20 years of Roosevelt and Truman. And they turned to Robert Taft, the senator from Ohio, otherwise known as Mr. Conservative, the Ted Cruz of his time. And he represented the real conservative legacy, as I think Cruz does in this election represent Reagan's legacy. But it turned out that voters were not so much angry at the liberal ideology, they were angry at all ideologies. And they said, we want a practical guy from outside of politics who's shown skill in another area, who can get things done, who will lead us out of our mess. And they went to Eisenhower, took the nomination away from Taft, beat him in a bunch of primaries, and gave it to Eisenhower, who was a pretty good president.
It worked out very well. I hear what you're saying. So really, you see history rhyming, at least, Trump serving as the outsider, someone who can accomplish something based on his past record and completely outside politics. It's worth noting that Ike used to say, now, I'm not a politician, but he turned out to be pretty good at it. Dick, we're going to go to the phones, and first up from Las Vegas, we welcome Jerry to our coverage tonight. Jerry, it's good to have you here on Newsmax TV.
Hey, Jerry.
How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Go right ahead, Jerry.
Well, I was really wanting to make a comment on your predecessor in reference to the activity with the stuff on Cruz's father, but I don't see a need to do that. Evidently, a lot of news journalists just don't see the intelligence of Mr. Trump. A lot of American people are recognizing it. Case in point, he demonstrated Cruz's inability.
Well, let's talk some about, apparently we lost Jerry's call. We thank Jerry for his comment. Dick, in terms of Donald Trump, and we've talked about it with others, almost the two faces of Donald, a public persona, bombastic, freewheeling, controversial, and yet a guy who graduated from the Wharton School of Business at Penn, obviously nobody's dummy. Who will we see more of as this campaign accelerates toward November?
Well, I think it's important to understand Donald on his own terms. He is not a conservative. He is not a liberal. He is an American, in the same sense that de Gaulle was a Frenchman. There are sometimes politicians who rise above ideology and are outside a party, who are going to embrace solutions that work regardless of their ideological pedigree. So Eisenhower balanced the budget, but on the other hand, he spent billions on the interstate highway system, created it. And I think in Donald Trump, you're going to see someone who satisfies the voters' desire to get past the ideological battle on Capitol Hill, not to win it for conservatives, but get past it and govern in the interests of the country. And I think that's the mandate they have in mind when they are voting for Donald Trump. Now, are they right? Will he live up to that very high billing? I don't know. But I think that's the way you have to look at Trump. You know what de Gaulle said when he ran for president of France? They said, "What's your position on this? What will your programs be?" He said, "When I assume power, I will know what to do with it." And he restored France to being a great country. He totally changed the nation.
Well, it's interesting, the parallels with the great generals of World War II, both in the United States, Dwight Eisenhower, and in France with Charles de Gaulle. Back to the phone we go right now. From Oregon, Joe is on the line. I believe he's checking in from Brookings, Oregon. Hiya, Joe. Welcome to our coverage.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for calling.
Yes, Brookings, Oregon. Yeah, well, it's great that Carly Fiorina can now concentrate on her singing career. But yes, Donald Trump. It's a great night, and I'm insulted by the likes of Ted Cruz. Goes around calling him a racist and a sexist when it was the Ted Cruz operatives who done everything they could do to try and get Phyllis Schlafly kicked out of her own organization. So, you know, Ted Cruz should just quit embarrassing himself, get out of the race. He won't even campaign out here in Oregon, you know.
Well, yeah, well, the whole, and that, you raise a lot of issues, Joe, with this whole thing, and it had a reflection tonight in Indiana, Dick. The whole alliance, the Cruz-Kasich alliance, looks like in retrospect that did more harm than good.
No, it did more good than harm. Kasich got only about a third of the votes that Cruz got, maybe half, maybe a third, and he might have been more even being from the next door state in Ohio. Cruz might have been down around 25 if it weren't for that. And I think it made sense for them to assign Kasich to Oregon. It's a more liberal state, and he's a more liberal candidate. But all this is ancient history, and if you bought a Cruz-Fiorina bump button or bumper sticker, hang on to it. It's going to be worth something.
Well, let's talk to someone else who hails from the state that Ted Cruz represents in the United States Senate, from the Lone Star State, Texas, from Midland to be specific. Here is Marlene. Hi, Marlene.
Good evening from Bush Country in Texas. I have put Senator Cruz Cruz into the Senate. I'm disappointed in his joining the establishment. I think this is the reason that my fellow Americans are turning him down. I do agree with Mr. Morris about Trump being an American, and I think that is the thing that is resonating across the country, and it's showing up in the numbers.
Marlene, if I could ask you, and I think I heard you correctly, you lamented the fact that Cruz joined the establishment. Was the very act of serving in the Senate, even though he stood up to Mitch McConnell, did that make him part of the, quote, establishment in your estimation?
Partly so, but he had to go along in order to get along in some areas, and that is disappointing. But you cannot fight the establishment, and this is the big thing that is against Cruz, is that he's part of the political establishment. I'm mad as hell against the National Republican Party, and the establishment politicians that run our country into the ground.
But you're happy about Donald Trump, correct, Marlene?
Well, if he is the nominee, I will support him.
All right. Marlene, we appreciate your perspective tonight from Midland, Texas. It was interesting to hear what Marlene had to say, that even Ted Cruz she worked hard to get him elected, but once he became part of the Senate, in her mind, he was part of the establishment.
No, I think Cruz did more to earn that label than just be in the Senate. He was positioned as the anti-Trump candidate, endorsed by Bush and a lot of mainstream centrist Republicans. But I do think that Cruz will continue his maverick ways, and I think Marlene will come to like him a little bit better. But as for Donald Trump, I think we have to understand that he is crafting his own way, a new way, a way that transcends party, transcends ideology. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party both faced revolts against their leadership. The Democratic Party suppressed it, like the Russians did in Hungary. In the Republican Party, tonight, the anti-establishment candidate won. And that will make all the difference in the election that's coming up to voters like Marlene and their Democratic equivalents, who don't like being like the Hungarian refugees under the Hillary tanks.
So we are seeing this come down to November. It looks like it's moving full speed ahead. On one hand, it looks like most Republicans, based on exit polls, Dick, want Cruz and Kasich out of the race. They're ready now to unite behind Donald Trump. Conversely, on the Democrat side, it seems a majority want Bernie Sanders to stay in the race. There must still be concerns for Hillary. 30 seconds remain, Dick. Are there danger signs ahead for Mrs. Clinton?
Yeah, she just lost Indiana, for God's sakes. Last numbers I saw were 52-48. I don't know if that'll continue, but, she can't lose Michigan and Indiana and hope to coast to victory by winning Texas and South Carolina. Those aren't states she's going to carry. And the young people who are the core of the Sanders vote are also the basis of the Democratic Party's electoral performance. Hillary has carried everybody she won't win in November and lost everyone she has to win in November.
Fair enough. Dick Morris, we thank you. Up next, Roger Stone and more as our coverage continues.